Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really diving in, going deep into a set of sources, all focused on one thing: building a spiritual life that's not just surviving, but actually flourishing.
Thriving even when things are chaotic, which seems increasingly important.
Exactly, because the sources we looked at, they really argue that, well, we're facing a perfect storm, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. Multiplying distractions, biblical literacy is apparently at historic lows, and just relentless spiritual testing. Think burnout, disconnection.
Yeah.
It's pervasive.
And the warning is pretty stark. If our faith stays shallow, if it doesn't have those intentional roots, it's likely going to wither when tested.
It is. So our mission today really is to pull out the core strategy these sources offer for building that resilience, that thriving, and it's anchored, unsurprisingly, in scripture and prayer.
Anchored is the key word.
Wow.
And there's this central image they use, this metaphor.
Ah, yes, the metaphor. It's powerful. It's the choice, essentially, between building on shifting sand, that shallow faith that just crumbles under pressure,
We've all seen that or felt it.
or alternatively, cultivating roots like an ancient Mediterranean olive tree.
Ah, okay. Tell me more about that image.
Well, picture it. Often looks gnarled, battered by the wind, maybe scorched by the sun, but it stays green. It keeps bearing fruit, sometimes for centuries.
Impressive resilience.
It is. But the visible strength isn't the real secret. The secret is underground, invisible. A vast, deep root system. That's the blueprint the sources offer for a flourishing faith. Hidden strength.
Okay, I like that. So let's unpack the theological architecture behind this rootedness. The sources seem keen to correct some common errors first, like faith is just performance.
Exactly. They want to get the why right before the how. There are three core theological claims. First, dependency.
Dependence, yeah.
Yeah. It pushes back against that whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality in spirituality. True spiritual life, real vitality, it comes from outside us, from God. Not mainly from our own effort or ingenuity.
Okay, but when you emphasize dependency, doesn't that risk making people passive? Just waiting around instead of, actually building those roots?
That's a really important question. The sources clarify the effort isn't in producing the life, it's in planting ourselves where the life source is.
Ah.
The image isn't a tree dragging itself to water, it's a tree planted by the water. Our work is aligning ourselves, sinking the roots intentionally towards the source. It's receptive effort, not self-generation.
Okay, receptive effort. I get that. So what's the second claim?
The second is formation over performance. This is crucial. Deep growth happens inside first.
Inwardly.
Yes. The roots change the tree internally long before you see any external fruit. So discipleship isn't just about changing behavior, it's about transforming identity.
Can you give a concrete example? How does that look different practically? Acting patient versus being patient.
Well, imagine just trying to act patient when inside you're boiling with anxiety or resentment. It's like putting a lid on a pot, right?
Yeah.
Eventually it blows.
Yeah, usually does.
True patience, the sources argue, grows from a deeper root. Maybe a root of trust in God's timing or sovereignty. So you don't just try harder to be patient, you cultivate that underlying trust, and patience becomes the natural outflow. It's shifting from doing good to becoming good.
Becoming good, okay. And the third claim deals with the hard stuff, suffering.
Yes, stability under trial. Deep roots are basically the theological answer to suffering and temptation. Rootedness gives you the right lenses to interpret hardship.
Lens is like.
Like a firm belief in God's ultimate goodness or his redemptive plan, even when things look bleak. That provides stability, endurance, hope. It's the anchor when the storms hit, personally or culturally.
Okay, so dependency, formation, stability. That's the why. Now let's get to the roots themselves. The sources talk about word and prayer as the two main ones, but not just as separate activities.
No, not at all. They are distinct, absolutely, but totally inseparable, like two sides of the same living root system. Think of Scripture, the Word, as the architecture. It's the blueprint, the revealed structure, the grammar of our faith reality.
And prayer.
Prayer is the sap. It's the lifeblood, the circulation system. It's the active relational flow through that structure provided by Scripture.
Okay, Scripture as architecture. What does that structure actually build in us, according to the sources?
Good question. Three things mainly. Revelation, what God has actually said. Memory, the big story that shapes our identity, connects us to believers past and present. And grammar, this is key.
Grammar.
Yeah, it shapes how we think, how we interpret everything. It gives us the essential categories: sin, grace, covenant, redemption. Reading Scripture immerses you in God's description of reality. It provides the objective truth.
So Scripture provides the framework, the language,
Right.
and prayer is where we actually use that language, live
Yeah.
within that framework.
Exactly. Prayer is the personal relational channel. It's where we take the word in, maybe wrestle with it sometimes, confess where we fall short of it, and commit to living it out. It's our response to God's initiative.
So they feed each other. A feedback loop.
Like a constant feedback loop. In prayer, we start breathing the language of Scripture. We learn how to pray from the Psalms, for example. And then in Scripture, we find the words, the concepts, the promises that fuel our prayer.
And what if that connection breaks? If you have one without the other?
Well, that's where things go wrong. Reading Scripture without a prayerful, relational response, without the Spirit, really risks just becoming head knowledge, accumulating facts, information without transformation, dead orthodoxy.
Ouch. Okay. And the other way around. Prayer without Scripture.
That risks drifting into pure subjectivism, maybe sentimentality. You end up just projecting your own ideas onto God, or maybe your prayers become just about your own wants, detached from God's revealed character and will in Scripture. The structure keeps prayer grounded.
Right. If the architecture itself is flawed, say you only read the Bible looking for rules.
Then the sap, your prayer life, will flow towards legalism on it instead of relationship.
Makes sense. Okay, so this is fascinating theologically, but for someone listening wanting clarity, how do we move from theory to practice? What are the actual habits the sources suggest for cultivating these roots, moving beyond potted plant faith?
Yes, and the sources are very practical here, offering simple, scalable frameworks. They start with morning rhythms,
Okay.
suggesting maybe 15 to 25 minutes, nothing heroic. The key is consistency. Read a short passage, maybe a psalm each day, or work through a gospel slowly. Depth over distance.
Then how do you stop it from just being a duty, checking the box?
By asking two specific questions after reading. First, what word or phrase kind of shimmered what stood out? And second, why might God be highlighting this for me today? That shifts it toward expecting an encounter.
Right, reading with expectation. Then prayer. You mentioned prayer can become just transactional, a shopping list.
It often does. So they recommend the ACTS prayer structure. It's a simple template: adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication, intercession. Yes, it deliberately starts with God, who He is, adoration, before we jump into our needs.
How does that work time-wise for a beginner, say in that 15, 25-minute window?
They suggest small time blocks, like 1 or 2 minutes for adoration, maybe using a line from the psalm you just read, then a minute for honest confession, a couple of minutes for specific thanksgiving, and then maybe 2 or 3 minutes for supplication, your needs, and praying for others.
Okay, that sounds manageable.
And crucially, they add finish with maybe 2 minutes of silence, just listening. That turns it from a monologue into a potential dialogue. Really important, that silence.
Listening. Okay. So that's the morning input, setting the trajectory. But staying attentive all day is hard. How do the sources suggest we kind of reflect on how the roots held up during the day?
That's where the examine comes in. It's an evening micro-habit, often just 5 minutes before sleep.
The examine. An old practice.
Very old, and its inclusion is significant. It's about cultivating attentiveness, a brief, reflective prayer looking back over the day.
How does it work? Is it just listing sins?
No, not primarily. It's more about spiritual awareness. You typically ask 2 things. First, where did I notice God's presence or grace today? Name one specific moment of gratitude. And second, where did I miss the mark? Where did I fail to live from my roots? Again, one specific moment for reflection or confession.
So it connects the morning reading and prayer intention directly to the day's actual experience.
Exactly. It trains you to see God in the ordinary and to learn from missteps without getting buried in guilt. It's about course correction and gratitude.
Okay, so morning reading and ACTS prayer, evening examine. If you combine these, what's the simplest rule of thumb that emerges?
It boils down to a really simple loop. Read, pray, act.
Read, pray, act.
Read a small bit of scripture, pray it into your situation, asking, okay, what's one concrete step I can take based on this? Then, crucially, do that step that day, however small. That tiny loop, done consistently, starts rewiring your desires and decisions. It gets the truth off the page and into your life.
Yeah. Into your hands and feet. Okay. But even with great habits, our minds can distort things.
Right.
The sources must warn about pitfalls.
Oh, absolutely. Intentions are good, but execution can go sideways. They highlight 3 major distortions. First, bibliolatry.
Bibliolatry. Worshipping the Bible itself.
In a sense, yes. Treating it like a magic charm or just a source of intellectual data rather than a living word that points us to a relationship with Christ.
Accumulating knowledge instead of seeking encounter.
Precisely. The remedy. Always pair study with prayerful listening. Aim for relationship, not just mastery of the text. The second danger is legalism.
Right. Thinking our performance earns God's favor.
Exactly. Equating completing the checklist, read my chapter, said my ACTS prayer with being good enough for God. Turning it into a transaction, a ledger.
So the fix.
The sources stress that grace and trust have to be the soil these practices grow in. The motivation must be gratitude, love, response, not guilt or trying to earn points.
Okay. And the third pitfall. It sounds related.
It is. Information without formation. Knowing all the right theological answers, maybe even teaching them, but your character, your affections, your humility, they remain unchanged.
Head knowledge that hasn't reached the heart or hands.
You got it. You know about grace but act judgmentally. You talk about love but are quick-tempered. The remedy here is intentionally pairing study with practices that demand humility and action, like silence, service, genuine confession. Knowledge has to lead to changed living.
This all sounds like it requires patience. People want results fast.
They do, and that's why the sources emphasize the long-term view. Growth isn't linear. Remember the olive tree. Roots thicken underground, unseen, sometimes for ages. We need to cultivate curiosity about what God is doing, and faithfulness in the process, not perfectionism. Dry spells happen, they test persistence, not necessarily indicate failure.
Okay, so pulling it all together, what's the fundamental difference this rootedness makes? If the key is foundation depth, how does that play out?
Well, the core distinction the sources make is stark. Fragile faith versus flourishing faith hinges entirely on the depth of these foundations. Neglect the roots, you risk instability. Cultivate them, and you gain clarity, courage, resilience, the capacity to bear fruit, especially under pressure.
And importantly, that fruit isn't just personal well-being. The sources were clear. This isn't just about private piety for your own comfort.
Not at all. The moral formation, the stability you gain isn't just for you. It becomes the bedrock for healthy community life and credible public witness.
How so?
Well, a life genuinely shaped by the gospel, rooted in word and prayer, inevitably changes how you engage the world issues of justice, how you use money, how you participate in society. It moves beyond just talking about virtue to actually embodying it.
So the ultimate test isn't necessarily how eloquent your prayers are in private.
No. The real measure, they suggest, is whether those deep hidden roots fed day by day through word and prayer actually produce public fruit. Fruit that benefits your neighbors, your community, the world.
That's a challenging thought to end on.
It is. Ask yourself, what could actually unfold in your life, your family, your work, your neighborhood, if you committed today to cultivating that subterranean strength, that deep root system? What if it became visible not through pious talk, but through consistent, humble acts of service, charity, and justice in your everyday life? What kind of tree will you be when the next storm hits?